Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into DevOps, the philosophy that completely flipped the script on how we build software. We're going to see how it tore down the walls between teams and turned slow, painful work into a massive competitive advantage.
So to really get DevOps, you first have to get the problem it solved. And this quote, it just nails it. Does this sound familiar? Your dev team builds an app with one tool, but the ops team says, nope, we use something else. That constant tug of war, that back and forth, for a long time, that was just the painful reality of making software.
In fact, this whole situation got a name: the wall of confusion. It was this invisible but very real barrier that stood right between the people building the software and the people running it, and it just made everything so slow. And if you dig in, the root of the problem was that these teams had goals that were, well, completely at odds with each other. The dev team, their job was to innovate and ship features as fast as possible. But the ops team, their one and only mission was to keep the lights on, to keep things stable, and to prevent anything from crashing. Speed versus stability. The whole system basically pitted them against each other.
And the result of all that conflict was, well, pretty much chaos. Releases weren't exciting, they were painful. Teams weren't collaborating, they were just in this endless cycle of putting out fires, fixing broken deployments, and all of this meant that the people who really mattered, the customers, were left waiting and unhappy.
But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if instead of fighting each other, these two teams could actually work together, toward the same goal? That one simple question, that idea, it started a revolution. And that revolution is DevOps. Industry analysts like Gartner define it not as a tool, but as a change in culture. And that's the key word right there. It's all about tearing down those silos between dev and ops so you can deliver software that is both faster and more reliable. You don't have to choose anymore. You often see this idea represented by this infinity loop. And it's perfect because it symbolizes this continuous, automated process. There's no more throwing code over the wall. Instead, everyone shares ownership of the entire process, from the very first idea to building it, running it in production, and then using feedback to start the loop all over again. So just look at the difference here, side by side. It's night and day, right? You go from these isolated teams stuck doing manual, error-prone tasks over to a world of collaborative teams who are supercharged by automation. And moving from conflicting interests to shared goals, that is what unlocks some serious speed and efficiency. Now, a culture shift is awesome, but you can't just wish it into being. To make it real, you need some powerful tools and practices. And one of the biggest game changers is this idea of treating your infrastructure like it's software. Okay, just think about this for a second. What if one of your critical servers just completely dies? And instead of a frantic, week-long manual rebuild, you could just run a single script and have a perfect copy back online in minutes. Sounds like magic, right? Well, that's the core promise of infrastructure as code. With infrastructure as code, your entire environment, I'm talking servers, networks, firewalls, the whole shebang, is all defined in simple code files. So if something catastrophic happens, whether it's a simple human error or something way worse, you don't panic. You just run the code again and rebuild everything, perfectly every single time. It's a huge safety net. So the workflow itself becomes incredibly simple and reliable. First, you script your setup. Then, and this part's absolutely crucial, you check that code into a version control system, like Git. That way you can track every single change. And finally, you deploy it automatically. Repeatable, reliable, and fast. Okay, so IC is amazing for managing our servers, but what about the apps themselves? See, these days, most modern applications are built and packaged into these lightweight little things called containers. So containers, they were a total game changer. They made it so easy to package up an app and run it anywhere. But, they also created a new massive headache. All of a sudden, you weren't managing just a few servers. You were trying to juggle hundreds, maybe even thousands of these tiny little containers all at once. How do you even do that? Well, for pretty much everyone, the answer is Kubernetes. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Kubernetes is the operating system for your cloud. It's the master conductor that orchestrates all of your containers and manages all of that mind-boggling complexity for you.
And honestly, Kubernetes gives your applications actual superpowers. If a piece of your app crashes in the middle of the night, Kubernetes just restarts it automatically. No PagerDuty alert needed. You get a sudden flood of traffic from a viral video, Kubernetes automatically scales up your app to handle it, and then scales it back down when things quiet down to save you money. It provides this incredible resilience, all without a human lifting a finger.
So, let's put it all together. What happens when you combine this amazing DevOps culture with the power of infrastructure as code and the automated resilience of Kubernetes? Well, the impact is nothing short of transformational.
The numbers here are just staggering. According to the highly respected State of DevOps report, elite, high-performing teams deploy new code 46 times more frequently than their slower peers. Just let that sink in. 46 times. That's the difference between shipping a new feature every few months versus shipping new things almost every day.
And here's what's really cool. This isn't just some abstract benefit for the company. It makes a huge difference for the developers themselves. The latest data shows they see massive jumps in their own productivity and in the quality of their work, and they get their code out to users faster than ever. It frees them up to do what they love, building cool stuff. And when your developers are that effective, the positive effects just ripple across the entire business. Yeah, you get faster innovation, but you also get way more stability, fewer emergencies. Issues get found and fixed faster, and because of all that newfound efficiency, your overall development costs actually go down. It's a win-win-win. So in the end, what you're building is so much more than just a better IT department. When you adopt these principles, you're building a fundamentally different kind of organization, one that's more agile, way more resilient, and just built to innovate from the ground up. And I think it's so important to end on this quote from DevOps pioneer Jez Humble, because DevOps isn't a destination. It's not a project with an end date. It's a never-ending process of continual improvement. The real lasting advantage isn't about reaching some finish line. It's about building the culture and the tools to make sure you're always getting better every single day.